distribution well. And I hope that everything can be seen in the display, because most of these things will happen in the editor. So let's start. So in this week's demo, I'm trying to show you the idea of building Omnibus images based on building CNG images based on Omnibus software definitions that we have. I already left a comment on the distribution demo notes, which points to the repository that we are using in this demo. This is the repository. I called it Omnibus CNG bridge for the lack of a better, but it's fairly simple. It has builder images. We take the Omnibus to the builder images, pretty much similar to what we do at the moment for building the image, building the Omnibus packages. Grab the artifacts and just deploy those artifacts in base images. This is what happens generally. It's very simple. With a few tweaks. This particular demo, I didn't use the whole Omnibus. I picked up a subset of Omnibus, a small subset of Omnibus, in particular Ruby image and GitLab image, and made a few tweaks in the Omnibus to make sure that it will pass. So we will walk through it, and ideally we will get the chance to take one of the images, GitLab image, and deploy it in a running cluster and see what will happen there. So let's start with the builder images. Builder images are not anything in extraordinary. I'm just gonna make it a bit larger so everyone can see better. The builder images are very simple. I have two variants here, a Debian image and a UBI image. The builder image, these are built images. The UBI builder image is literally stacking UBI builder, UBI Ruby GitLab Ruby UBI, and GitLab Go UBI on top of each other, with a minor addition of Omnibus as a dependency. I did not use the R fork of Omnibus. I used the Omnibus gem for simplicity of the installation, but this can change as well. Nothing particular happens in these images. I only want to show you a small patch that I did in UBI images. I manually tweaked the OHI entries. This is what Omnibus uses to determine the packager. So I kind of hacked Omnibus to make sure that it does not use RPM builder or Debian builder. There is another fallback packager called makeself, which is basically a shell script and a tar.gz payload and a post-install script, and that's it. It's for the platforms that Omnibus cannot build a package. But again, since we are using our own fork of Omnibus, we can go ahead and make it look a little better, and we do some development there and even change the packager. So this is the only tweak. I have the so I think I have yeah. Let's start with UBI builder. I'm going to remove the UBI builder. I want to, because I'm testing with it, I want to start another instance which uses a new cache. So I'm going to use the Omnibus that I have here. And let's use so this is the builder image, and in this image I'm going to use, imagine this is the CI job. I'm going to build Omnibus. So let's take a look at Omnibus here and what is changed here. So software definitions, config directory is the important directory here. Software directory is a subset. I picked up Ruby and Gitly and their dependencies and brought them here. The difference here is that I added 2 additional projects, one for Ruby, one for Gitly. So currently we only have a GitLab image, sorry, a GitLab project, but this is pretty much the same as GitLab. The dependency is Ruby, this is Gitly and its dependencies. It's an independent project. So I'm going to do a bundle install here. So the tweaks, I had to do some tweaks about license finder here because I really couldn't make it work in these builder images. Some gems weren't really right, so I just commented those parts. Also, because I'm using the standard gem, not the fork, I had to comment some of the directives of the Omnibus DSL to make sure that it passes. So let's see if it's work. Yeah, we have 2 projects. I'm going to build Ruby. So let me see. Okay, just kill it. Okay, while this thing is working, let me show you the Debian image that I built. Yes. Sorry, this one. So I have a distroless instance variant here. Actually, I think it's better to look at it with guide. It's more. So it only has 3 layers, and the image total size is 65 megabytes. And that's it. It's coming from the layer that I injected is 65 megabytes, 46 megabytes. And this is the image. And if you want to take a look at how does it work, just let's bring back one. This is IRB. Yeah. So with OpenSSL. So I'm going to show you the Docker files. So this thing keeps building, and we eventually grab the package. But I'm going to show you how the Docker file works. So let's take a look at the Docker files. This is the UBI Docker file. This is the distribus Docker file. And what I did, it has a two-stage build. For the distroless, I used the cluster as a build for the build phase. I just copy the artifact that was built in the builder image, run it, and then grab everything from opt/opt Ruby to the distroless image, and that's it. Same thing with UBI. Once this is done, I'm going to show you how this really works, but it's pretty obvious. Same UBI image, UBI minimal, copy everything from /opt Ruby to this. Now, I want to show you something. This is minimal. I tried it with micro and it failed because glibc is not there completely. So you might need to figure out what to do with the systems that don't have glibc, because for currently Omnibus is built with a pretty large for pretty like ready to use distributions rather than very trimmed down distributions like trimmed down images. There will be some changes in Omnibus. Okay, this is still okay. We have the package, I guess. The build is done. Let me exit. So I'm going to copy this to let's go to the Docker review. Call it it is uncompressing and expanding the package and done. Very quick. Yeah, we are good. Going to do the same thing with, I think I have a UBI builder. I have a Debian builder as well. I'm going to use the cache this time. I don't want to wait. Same thing. This is the Debian, which can be used for distroless. And so let's take a look at a better look at Omnibus. So everything actually copied from the current Omnibus. I added the projects for specific final images that I want. And in software definitions, I haven't only commented out the things that were problematic for building, in particular license finder. I also added another software definition, which is basically software definition for CNG, but I expect we will have to add more software definitions, for example, for CNG specific software, like GitLab Logger, Gombalate, or anything else that we are using. We will get through some of the challenges later, but this is the software definition that right now I'm using. Let me just give you, this is the whole software definition. It only copies the configuration and the scripts for the image. So make sure that the configuration and some of the scripts that are needed for the CNG image are included in the package. And this is how the CNG files look like. So this is the config file for Italy, git config. And see, this is just the entry point and health check scripts of GitLab. I can do the same thing here. Neat. I think the second one is the Debian. Okay, we have the instruments image as well. Let's see if this one is working as well. Yes. So with that, we have two images, two versions of the images from Omnibus. This is for GitLab Ruby. Now, let's take a look at a more practical example, which is Italy. Italy is more complicated for a few for reasons that we get through right now. If you, I'm not sure if anyone taking notes, but I think we can have a further discussion on this. So let's take a look at Italy. I'm going to use the build a UBI image for Italy with this. I'm going to use I'm going to use the existing cache for Italy to speed it up, the cache that we used for Ruby. Yeah, there is a cache here. Yes. Okay, it uses it started using. Good. Reuse the cache of Ruby. So it's going to build Italy. Let's take a look at software definition here. Literally the same thing that we copied minus license finder. And while this thing is building, we can go and take a look at, well, for distroless, we don't have a shell, but for UBI, we do have a shell. this is the output of this. And that's the only place in the image that these files are needed. One thing that I can show you while this thing is building is this. Sorry, this one. Changing the Ruby UBI base image to micro. This won't work. Here's the problem. libcrypt is missing, and the reason is that it doesn't have glibc. I think. Haven't dug into this further. I just found it last night, but I think it's part of the problem. And even if we fix this one, we will probably run into other problems. Okay, GitLab is still building. I am going to do I have the previous image that I built, so let's use that one because I want to use this image. I'm gonna push this image to my registry, and then we try to replace it in. I hope this is the right, because we're going to. Okay. Looks like that. GitLab is still building. So I have a GitLab instance here, deployed fresh from GitLab chart. Well, certificates are not particularly correct. Let me secret. I'm gonna remove this instance after the demo. So this password will be. So this is the running instance, and let's take a look at the GitLab. So what we want to do, we need to go here and change a few things. About the GitLab image, let's take a look at this Docker file. For GitLab image, I couldn't really use the bare, only the output of the Omnibus for two reasons. One, the custom user, which needed to be created because it uses a particular user, not any non-root user. And the second reason was that it requires some other dependencies that we do not build in Omnibus and PS. This is for health monitoring script. And that's why the actual image is built based on UBI again, because I need a DNF to install those dependencies, like these dependencies.
You should have access to micro DNF. So we should be able to get the smaller images yet.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Just slipped my mind.
That's fine.
But these dependencies had to be installed. So this is one thing to keep in mind. If you want to have a completely self-contained image without any external dependency that is coming from any repository and can be deployed across different platforms, then we will probably have to also add these. Some software are CNG specifics and are not built as part of normal Omnibus. So part of it is still there, and I had to do some tweaking as well, because we have this we use this customized entry point that grabs the configurations from the environment variable, renders templates, etc., etc. So it is basically kind of like a hack of Gitly to make it look like the Gitly that we have. But the principle is the same. The installer is run, the output is grabbed from the results are captured from the build image and are shoved into the UBI image. So let me just go ahead and start changing the image. I have the so we have to change two things. We have to change the containers, and this. So I'm going to change the image to the one that we built. And we need to change the environment variables, because these paths have changed. So instead of building this into /etc Italy, I'm going to build it in or opt Italy, not because it is coming from Omnibus, but because I didn't want to grab anything from it /etc. And the permission of this directory is correct. The rest remains the same. And because I don't want it to fail, I want to have the chance, I'm just gonna delete the liveness and readiness groups. Just to be able to get a shell from the image in case things didn't go as expected. This is the first thing that we need to change. Actually, I should have config map first, but it's okay. I'm just gonna copy and paste the config map. I'm gonna show you the config map that changes. Actually, I'm gonna delete this pod and have it to be created again, just to make sure that the oh no, yeah, we have it. It is running. I see. Couple of warnings. I'm not sure if this is correct. I'm just gonna delete it and create it again. It's taking too long. Just making sure that this GitLab has changed as expected. It is initializing again. Oh, no, it's working. Let's do something with GitLab. There are a couple of warnings here. I think it's probably the socket.
There may be some pathing issues in this particular case, due to user home.
Could be. Path. Yes, that's correct. I think
Is in the CNG images and configuration from the chart, we expect to set the path for the sockets into the home directory, whereas in the Omnibus, it sticks it under the GitLab process directories.
yes, I think probably path is problem because we don't have that. So let me do something else. Let me just grab this. Okay, and go back here. So I never really got this one. Let me also add the path. I don't think that we can really define a variable placeholder in here. Okay, why this thing is picking up a scene? Oh. No, it's building Omnibus. Sorry, GitLab. I still see the connection errors here. Oh. Okay. Let's see if it just works. Internal AP unreachable.
Mhm.
Ugh. Yeah, I think the path is shit. That's the socket.
No, in this particular case, GitLab tried to verify the request and didn't know how to come back around. So web services reached out to it, and it didn't. The line is right there. It's like, I don't know how to talk to that, and it blew up. Let's see, correlation ID 91FTY.
Not found. Git attributes. Not found. Hang on.
Let's focus on the internal API unreachable first. Because ignoring that, it literally could not auth and it exploded.
How about I do something else? I create a new, because I get the feeling that this is something that okay. Yeah.
Internal API unreachable.
You see that again?
I do.
Yeah. Yes.
You hit W, it'll turn on line wrap, and we can probably catch all of the string. Okay, it tried to get to
web service.
It tried to get to //API v4 internal allowed at that address. So can we make sure that that address is correct? Because that service has to exist and have backers.
No. This is not correct. This is the config file. I think because I copied the config from somewhere. This is the config that I copied. Let me see. Let's look at the config map. This is talking about chart. What? Sometimes I have this problem with
hit the 0, you'll get the whole thing.
no, sometimes it just keeps waiting. I don't know why. I sometimes just quit and use stir. It's easier. This is not correct. This is not the name of the chart. This should have been test 1. And I think it is coming from the config somewhere. There it is.
The good news
This
is
is
if you edit the
incorrect.
config map or even in the container, it should fix itself, but you can't do that.
But this URL is coming from the template, right? This should come from template. Let me just double check it. It's basically, that's the problem. Let me just go ahead and fix it. This is the copy. And I just want to check the name of the service for. It's this one. Let's see what else do we have that is not. Let's see if it's. Should I delete the chart? The pod?
You have to restart the pod. It does not have a watcher for config map changes.
Yeah.
Now, I will know for everybody, you only have to do that when you're doing manual edits, because when you actually do Helm, it will recognize the SHA change and then cause it to restart.
Okay. I see that warning. It's kind of. Let me leave. So then try. Commit. Yes. Right. It should be reachable.
Okay, so let's pop a shell into the container and find out. Multi-line. We've all been here. Copied it out of K9S, and here comes the multi-line getting us.
You think that during copy and paste it has something, or just
No, it's
config
that
map?
it's an ncurses get text UI, and when you copy the line, it copied the space and the bar character, the new line character, and then the etc. Okay.
The web service service, it should be correct, but let me just go ahead and shell again. Okay. dot missing. It should be like this.
Mhm.
Okay.
Not
This is
resolve.
not resolved. Why?
Okay, so cat etc resolve.conf. Well, that'd be part of it. What is the actual deployment and namespace that you're in?
The deployment.
Because it looks like you're in demo.
No. Yes, I am in demo. Config map. Config map.
Before you leave the pod, we can edit the URL and verify it's going to work.
Fair enough. This is demo.
Ta-da! Okay.
And you haven't got that this far. I just want to see if this works. Don't see anything here.
Can you do me a favor and hit W so we can see the whole line?
Internal server.
Okay, so the good news is that it doesn't look like it's
Okay.
having a problem.
It's just. I think because the pod system should have been problematic. I'm going to try with another project. Not found.
Some not founds are somewhat expected, believe it or not.
Just git attribute actually, which is
Right, because the web service will go ask. All right. Why
I'm just going to call it.
did you create a blank one?
Yes, I created a new blank.
Like a blank without initializing?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, looks like that we have it. It's awfully slow. I'm not sure. I don't think it's has anything to do with the push operation timed out.
Second. So I want to read the logs for a minute. I'm seeing messages and I'm trying to find out if any of them are actually failures. Because I see error message user commit files failed.
Failed to connect to all addresses. I get the feeling that could be the configuration again. I'm not sure.
Okay, let's pause and read what the messages say so we can find out what actually occurred so that we can solve the root cause. The could not fit the 14 message was basically saying that I couldn't talk to Giddily. What happened? That's what web services is saying. So let's see what we have here.
While you are doing that, I'm gonna just double check.
Bit references, push operation timed out. If you're force pushing, cancel after 10 seconds. Do me a favor and create a repository that actually has data in it. So create one and initialize the repository.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead.
It doesn't have to be from a template. You can create a blank one. You just have to actually check the initialize repository button.
It is initialized.
Okay. If you hit initialize with a README and it creates project and it has no data, something's wrong.
I think that's the case.
Okay, then that's what we need to hunt down right now, not why does committing not work. We need to figure out why there's no data. This time we got data. So let's go and try to edit that README.
No.
Your changes have been successfully committed.
I'm looking at the config file. So this is the config file. Things that have changed in the config file. Well, bindir is pointing to, of course, embedded. It is redirected to opt Gittily. Home directory hasn't changed. Sorry, this one. Storage is still home directory. The logs go to the same location. Authentication is still coming from blah. The Git path is in the embedded.
Are you sure your changes didn't manage to commit?
Last time?
Yeah. Just right now, like ones that you just made a second ago.
Yeah, I think it didn't. It was timing out. I don't know what. change random change here. Yeah.
I'm not seeing a timeout, or I'm missing something. Or is the UI lying to us?
I think if we go back and I think what the previous one. Let's try this one.
Because now we have an empty README.
Yeah. Shouldn't have to be empty. I'm 100% sure that there was a problem in this file.
All I'm saying is going through now.
Okay, let's try with the first one. This one is never really initialized.
That one was never initialized. So you may or may not be able to actually commit a file to an uninitialized repository.
It okay. The form contains a file. Okay, yeah. The branch doesn't exist because it's not initialized. It is now a merge request. The repository is not initialized. The branch is not there.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is the first one that really came up with the broken. This one and second one came up with the broken Italy. So anything else that you want me to show you on this
Honestly,
running
it's working
instance?
now.
Yeah, it is working now. I don't know what happened by discovering. Then again, I tried to pick up something that has multiple layers of build, has a Go module, has a Ruby module, has a persistence layer. So Gitali in that regard is a good example, which pushes everything to the extremes. If we can make sure that Gitali works, we can also make sure that everything else works. Sorry. So that's it. This is how we can start building things from Omnibus. If you have any question, discussion, I'm all yours.
Okay, so obviously there's some refactoring that needs to be done to the configuration files because all of the pathing and permissions will have been altered, right? What I will toss out is we can effectively do this. Question is, how do we slot this kind of behavior in, right? So the tricky part here is, do we do this based off the final content of the Omnibus package, or are we trying to do this on a per basis for each component generated by the Omnibus?
You mean breaking down the whole Omnibus, or?
No, I mean, where do we get the artifacts on the output of the Omnibus run that is not a full-blown Linux package?
Oh, okay. This wasn't really a full-blown Linux package. This was a shell script. If I can show you.
Okay, so
right
let me.
This is not a perfect. This is not a perfect solution. This is the shell script. This shell script is too much. We can have our own packager, which is basically a tar.gz file. And a post install, but this is what it does. This is a shell script with a tar-gz payload, which can also run a post script, post install script. So
basically,
we probably want something similar.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to try to say is our omnibus that we already have, if we use that as the source of truth, there's a few impacts that we have, but let's focus on how we can actually use its output. Its most common output is going to be the total omnibus package. We can use that to effectively slice and dice, right? The contents, because a Debian package is a tarball. An RPM package is effectively a tarball. It's a CPIO archive, but it's still the same thing. We then basically need to know what bits everything actually needs so that we can make sure we put them where they belong. And then there are system level requirements that the omnibus just assumes, right? And that's a whole separate ball of wax.
Can you give an example of one of those?
glibc.
Yeah. And OpenSSH. That's
OpenSSH is actually not an assumed, believe it or not. That's literally just, we're not building that. So we have applications that want OpenSSH, but we don't actually do anything with it in Omnibus. It's an external requirement, as opposed to glibc, which is actually foundational library that's assumed to be present in the version that we built against.
So going back to your initial conversation about output of Omnibus, I think we should have multiple projects, because collecting the requirements of particular module like Gitly from the full-blown Omnibus requires a lot of work in terms of identifying what those dependencies, what those files are, and what is needed actually. So we need to go and filter out the output of Omnibus per module, as opposed to having separate separate for different modules, which bundles everything that is needed as dependencies into one particular output. What we can do, which leverages Omnibus, is to share the build cache. So we can share the build cache of Omnibus with CNG, assuming that building CNG images are the pipelines that are forking out from the main pipeline of Omnibus. So that's one of the things that we can consider. The second thing about Omnibus and adding dependencies, some of the dependencies, at least I can think of glibc, that's a must-have. We can't go around it. And if we want to use a base image based on UBI micro or any other base image, we need to have glibc or the equivalent, or in something equivalent. We can't do that. We need to add more. Go ahead.
Let me also toss in there that the problem with building somewhere else and then building on UBI is that they actually have a different glibc. So unless we're taking only the Red Hat aligned versions, so building on RHEL and using the glibc from UBI at an exactly matched version, we can highly expect that stuff will explode in weird ways. And
I see.
This does actually align, believe it or not, it's a problem in Go too, where Go generally makes statically compiled binaries, but it avoids being fully static when using certain components that are by default in CGO, and it will then use LDD for those components where it reaches out to system libraries.
Yeah.
There was a case recently I was working with Will, and he like, oh, this should work. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't compile a static, and your empty image doesn't have like think it might have actually literally been glibc.
Mhm.
And no, he was actually missing the LD Linux system library. So he couldn't get anywhere. He tried to run the program and it said file does not exist. Vague, weird errors, to say the least. So there are some challenges that we will have to face, and like the UBI will have to be lockstep to whatever version of RHEL is out there. And assuming that, RHEL 8.5 perfectly aligns to UBI 8.5. It
I
should,
am using UBI for build image as well. Exact
Understand.
same version. I'm not using Red Hat for the build image, for the builder. So to be sure that the software is going to run in the exact same environment that it was built. Not exact same environment, but as similar
Mhm.
as the base image that it was built upon.
Right. So right now I'm talking about extending beyond this work. Like we can use Omnibus as a toolkit, but using the GitLab Omnibus's output, its libraries, which that pipeline currently doesn't have any awareness of UBI. What I'm saying.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's where we have the problem with we build, 7, 8 images of both variations for many distributions. But when we turn around and use those cache, they're going to be built against those versions. So we have
Mhm.
that concern.
Mhm.
So whether we do, as Robert once put it, a slice and dice of the Omnibus package itself, or we use the build cache, we're still in the same situation where the origin has to be close enough to the destination.
Mhm.
Yeah, the more matchy, the better, right?
Yeah. That's correct. The way that I was envisioning it was that we use these builder images, closed builder images, and have spawn new pipelines. But sharing build cache between the current Omnibus, in particular for UBI, could be a bit challenging here. And not to mention that if you want to expand the same practice to ARM images.
That's a whole other topic.
Yeah, we can use REST. Yeah, we are building for REST PBN.
Well, we're also doing it we're preparing work for SUSE in combination with ARM. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of which ways and hows, but that's a whole other ball of wax right now.
Yeah.
So it is a viable example of, look, we can interact the Omnibus into the result of the containers, right? Effectively, we're just rehoming, we're changing where things are compiled, and we're rehoming where they are in the current setup versus the future setup, right? So instead of being served GitLab, whatever, it goes back to the GitLab embedded.
Well, depends on how you expand them, but yeah, we are basically doing that. But
don't get me wrong, I can stick a statically compiled binary wherever I want.
but the whole libraries are built with that prefix for that particular image.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Oh, and speaking of which, we are actually in this way, if we do not set the prefix, we cannot reuse the cache either. So all the libraries need to be in a /opt GitLab embedded bin, regardless of if it's Ruby or Gitly or registry or anything. So
the runtime homes of all the things have to be in the same place.
Yeah. Yep. For us to be able to reuse cache. So that's another thing to consider. Again, this is just an example. If we want to do something similar to this, we need to make changes in small changes in our fork of Omnibus, the GitLab Omnibus, adding software modules, and then starting to roll out this. We can effectively retire CNG and instead focusing on the image temples. Image will become a lot simpler. Ideally, we won't have any Docker image. It's going to be generated based on the Omnibus output, and you need to address the changes, the rehoming, and changing the configuration passes in chart. So I'm not sure how we can really implement it while we are also delivering a working solution every release. The last thing that I can think of here is that we might have a problem with Init Scripts because we are using shell. And if we want to go for image of shell, like distroless, then that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So much so that we might want shell.
No, we require shell.
Yeah.
Because it's either used as part of spawn up, right? Some of our initiation or initialization bits of our own container orchestration right now uses shell.
Yeah.
And second, there are entire application bits that actually assume that they can call a shell script. One of those instances, for example, was reminded me today. We have file hooks where you literally put something in there, and on such and such events, it runs by and actually executes the hook.
Yeah.
So if we don't have shell, that
doesn't work.
Poof goes the functionality. So there are things that we will have to address. Now, that's where we just make a base image that has the bare minimum requirements that we expect and everything. And then we go from that rather than bare distroless.
Yeah. It wasn't a bare distroless. Disclaimer, the bare distroless doesn't have glibc. So I used another distroless which has glibc. So
Well,
like
bare or
17.
not, we would still need a centralized base image that gives us the assumption so that we have one set of base layers. Not a big deal.
Images are smaller. I'm not sure what is the size of the GitLab that we are using now, but it is just going to be really bare minimum. So I think we can get away with like 30 to 40 megabytes of base image and then add anything else on top of it.
We need to, this is related, this bit is particularly related to a number of things that we have going on in the CNG as it is, which is actually implement said base image. And second, not putting Ruby in all the things.
Okay, yeah, that's a good thing.
So there's a whole bunch of our images are not refined, and there's a 14 open issues about it.
Yeah.
So this is a shortcut way to get to that. Yeah. They reach the end result the same. I agree.
Yes, but for example, if you want, we are opting in for compilate and GitLab Logger and trying to push it, make it more pervasive across all the images that we have. For example, in this scenario, compilate and GitLab Logger will become Omnibus software definitions that are included in CNG, but not the actual Omnibus, the real Omnibus. And I tried it. We can accommodate that. You can have software definitions that are not really used in a project, so it doesn't impact Omnibus at all.
Right. So from this point, what I'm seeing is we have a complete demo. We can show that this is how you would use an omnibus definition to do this, but there's a lot of backing questions of how do we do it? How do we actually do it? Can we share build cache? Can we just take the artifact out of the other one? Which ways to actually implement it? So I think the next steps are that break down the rest of the research items. We have an open issue somewhere about this. I just couldn't find it. It's also probably like 7 months old.
So do you think that we should pursue this line of inquiry or turn it into an epic and try to define more research issues and collect all the questions that we have? Like start organizing and thinking in this line. Is this the direction that distribution is going to take? I think this is particularly going to do the distribution build.
Right now, I don't know. We need to take the time to do the research to see if it's viable to spend a lot more time on it.
Mhm.
So we should get this recorded into an issue or the issue that already exists if we don't already have a spike somewhere. Right? From there, then we can worry about going from that point to doing more research after a little bit of conversation, especially with our current Omnibus experts not currently on the call.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, I'm just gonna stop the sharing the screen. I think we are at the end of the way past our demo time. So thank you for joining. And yeah, if you have any comments, just leave it in the demo notes and I will try to address them.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.